Minister of Research and Higher Education, Sigrun Aasland. Holberg Prize laureate, Lyndal Roper. Nils Klim laureate, Majse Lind. Distinguished members of the Holberg Committee, friends and friends of the university. On behalf of the University of Bergen, it is my privilege to welcome you all to this year's Holberg Prize award ceremony. The Holberg Prize and the Nils Klim Prize were established by the Norwegian Parliament in 2003 to recognize outstanding international scholarships in the humanities, social sciences, law, and theology. The Holberg Prize is named after Ludvig Holberg, a citizen of Bergen, a writer, a historian, a humanist. As an Enlightenment thinker, Holberg believed that arguments should be grounded in reason. He championed the role of a rational thought in fostering sound public discourse, while weaving ideas of compassion and tolerance into his literary work. Today, we find ourselves amid new technological revolution driven by artificial intelligence. We are witnessing technological advances with the potential to fundamentally reshape how we engage with complex fields such as security, governance, healthcare, business, and indeed also research. The potential for scientific and industrial application is vast. Artificial intelligence represents immense possibilities for the research by enabling the analysis of complex data sets at precedental scale and speeds. Its responsible integration into scholarly inquiry has the potential to transform methodologies accelerate discovery and deepen theoretical understanding across disciplines. At the same time, the capacity for critical thinking is irreplaceable, and so is the need for knowledge to be applied, to be tested, and scaled into real-world context. An awareness of the growing concentration of power in the hands of few dominant actors is also needed. The emergence of AI has made one thing clear. More than ever, we need courageous work of outstanding scholars, critical and original reflections. The Holberg Prize not only celebrates Holberg's Enlightenment ideals, it also underscores that perspectives from the humanities, social sciences, law, and theology are indispensable in addressing the challenges we face as individuals and as societies. The Holberg Prize and the Nils Klim Prize for 2006 honor the remarkable contributions of two scholars. Professor Lyndal Roper for her original research in early modern European history, and Associate Professor Majse Lind, recipient of this year's Nils Klim Prize, for her innovative research on youth, identity, and mental health. Dear laureates, in a time when knowledge is abundant but wisdom is tested, it is a great honor to celebrate you, the eminent scholars who help us to know the difference. It is a great pleasure for me now to introduce our new speaker, Sigrun Aasland, Minister of Research and Higher Education. Heartily welcome to you all.
Dear laureates, Rector, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, on behalf of the Norwegian government, it is my great pleasure to congratulate Professor Lyndal Roper on receiving the Holberg Prize and Associate Professor Majse Lind on receiving the Nils Klim Prize. You are both truly worthy recipients of these prizes, celebrating the spirit and legacy of Ludvig Holberg. Professor Roper's research offers new perspectives on European history and shows us how ideas and beliefs from the past continue to shape today's world. Roper's work demonstrates why the humanities are essential for understanding the society that we live in. Majse Lind is awarded the Nils Klim Prize for her innovative research on youth, identity, and mental health, including how to find comfort even when facing mental health challenges. And this is an area that concerns many and carries great societal importance, therefore concerns us all. We live in times of great uncertainty, and I know this directly impacts many young people, and we know it impacts us all. The value of knowledge and research are being questioned in ways that few would think possible only some years ago, and in places few had foreseen it happening. Many of the things that were stable are now unstable, and many truths that were evident are now uncertain. How quickly can a society change from the stable to the unstable? How can something that today is unthinkable, like the witch persecutions that affected so many innocent people in early European history, at a time have been perceived just and necessary? And in a leap of time, how can we understand the growing mental health challenges in Western countries like Norway today? How can AI give us new perspectives on persistent problems? How can we understand the world around us without the humanities? Without the curiosity to the human condition that fuels researchers like the laureates we celebrate today? The simple answer is we cannot. These truths are self-evident for everyone who is truly interested in understanding society, understanding people, understanding our world. And not all share that interest, because knowledge can also challenge power. Knowledge can question structures that some do not wish to be questioned. Knowledge can empower those who some people do not want to be empowered. And in times of growing uncertainty, we must therefore continue to choose knowledge over prejudice. We must continue to stand by the basic principles of a knowledge-based world, of rigorous method, and the constitution itself of knowledge, where we do never have all the answers, but we must keep exploring, and we must do so within a knowledge society where we can challenge each other openly, keep the dialogue alive, and adhere to basic principles of transparency and reliability. We must, in short, continue to be inspired by researchers such as Lyndal Roper and Majse Lind, and we must, in the spirit of Ludvig Holberg, never stop discussing, talking, and learning from each other. Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Minister, rectors, representative of the mayor, laureates, and distinguished guests and friends from Norway and abroad. Today, we are delighted to honor and celebrate the 2026 laureates, as we heard, Professor Lyndal Roper and Associate Professor Majse Lind. As chair of the board of the Holberg Prize, appointed by the University of Bergen, it is my great privilege to guide you through this award ceremony. We are gathered in the University Aula in Bergen, the home of the Holberg Prize, to celebrate these outstanding laureates who have made groundbreaking contributions to the academic fields covered by the Holberg Prize and the Nils Klim Prize. The Holberg Prize was established by the Norwegian Parliament in 2003, covering research areas not covered by the Nobel Prizes. The prize is administered by the University of Bergen on behalf of the Norwegian Ministry of Education and Research. The prize is named, as we heard, after Ludvig Holberg, a Danish-Norwegian intellectual born in Bergen 1684. Writing in the natural law tradition of the early Enlightenment, Holberg's comedies, satires, moral essays, and his academic works profoundly influenced Scandinavian cultural development. Each year, 2 prizes are awarded in the academic fields of the humanities, social sciences, law, or theology. The main Holberg Prize and the Nils Klim Prize. These prizes are awarded by the Holberg Board based on the recommendation of academic committees composed of outstanding international scholars in the relevant fields. The committees select their candidate from nominations submitted from scholars and institutions worldwide. One of the primary ambitions of these prizes is to inspire and engage young scholars and to promote dialogue across generations of researchers. The Nils Klim Prize is therefore awarded annually to a young researcher under 40 years of age from or working in a Nordic country. Named after the young protagonist in Holberg's novel, Nils Klim's Underground Travels from 1741, the prize is valued at 500,000 Norwegian kroner. On behalf of the University of Bergen, and following the recommendation of the Nils Klim Committee, the board of the Holberg Prize has awarded this year's Nils Klim Prize to Associate Professor Majse Lind. Born in 1989, Majse Lind is an Associate Professor of Psychology at Holberg University, Denmark, where she received her PhD in 2018. Dr. Lind has since held 2 postdoctoral positions in USA, one at the University of Florida and one at Northeastern University. She was appointed assistant professor at Holberg University in 2022, appointed associate professor in 25, and received her clinical authorization that same year. Dr. Lind's research centers on identity. She investigates identity at the intersection of personality development and personality pathology, with a particular focus on narrative identity. Dr. Lind is director of the In-Depth Lab, where she leads several research projects funded by the Independent Research Fund Denmark and the Carlsberg Foundation. She is also co-director of the AI Mind Lab, where they integrate artificial intelligence methods to detect and intervene on early markers of personality pathology. Dr. Lind serves as president-elect of the International Society for the Study of Personality Disorders and chairs its Internationalization Committee. In these roles, she works to strengthen global collaboration in personality pathology research, with particular attention to supporting scholars in underrepresented regions. Majse Lind has published internationally, including in peer-reviewed leading journals in her field, and has received national and international awards for her research on personality disorders and narrative identity. In addition, she is actively engaged in editorial and professional service. The Nils Klim Committee is impressed by Dr. Lind's publication record and the committee finds that Dr. Lind contributes to urgent issues of mental health in the Nordic countries and beyond. How to understand, discover, and address personality disorders, especially among adolescents, but also among the elderly. The committee maintains how Lind draws from and contributes to interdisciplinary insights across social sciences and the humanities, including the field of narration and the life stories people construct and reconstruct about their past, present, and presumed future. The committee underscores that Lind also pioneers the use of AI to detect early signs of narrative identity disturbances to enable crucial early-stage interventions. The Nils Klim Committee concludes that Dr. Lind's original and innovative academic contributions meet all the criteria of the prize to a remarkable degree. The Holberg board has approved the recommendations of the Nils Klim Committee and finds Majse Lind to be a most worthy recipient of the 2026 Nils Klim Prize. I now invite the Minister of Research and Higher Education, Sigrun Aasland, and Majse Lind to the stage, where Minister Aasland will confer this year's Nils Klim Prize on Associate Professor Majse Lind.
Minister of Research and Higher Education, Sigrun Aasland, Mayor Marit Wanke, Madam Rector, Holberg Prize laureate Lyndal Roper, distinguished members of the Nils Klim Committee and the Holberg Board, family, friends, and colleagues. I'm deeply honored and humbled to join the distinguished line of Nils Klim laureates, who I hold in the highest regard. On behalf of my field, I'm equally honored that narrative identity, our life stories, is being recognized in this important way. When Dan McAdams in the 1980s posed the fundamental question, what do we know when we know a person? He moved beyond the dispositional traits such as extroversion and neuroticism, those that describe patterns of behavior. He also went beyond goals and motives and instead pointed to a deeper layer of personality, the life stories. The layer that captures what makes each of us unique, the layer that speaks to what it means to be human. We are, by nature, storytellers. We construct narratives of who we are to create a sense of coherence across time, linking our past, present, and imagined futures. In today's world, research moves faster than ever, driven by big data, speed, and technological innovation. Yet, narrative research asks us to do something quite different. It asks us to slow down, to listen, to let stories breathe, and to make sense of them. But not all stories are given the space to breathe. Some are silenced, marginalized, or stigmatized because they do not fit dominant cultural expectations, the so-called master narratives. These narratives shape not only how a good life is defined, but also who has access to living it. People differ in their opportunities and resources to tell such stories and to inhabit them. At a time when the world faces a growing mental health crisis, this becomes particularly urgent. Increasing numbers of young people are struggling, especially young women. For many individuals living with mental illness, the stories do not align with the dominant narratives of agency, coherence, or redemption. Instead, their narratives may be more fragmented, contaminated, and marked by loss, alienation, and diminished mastery. In my work, I'm honored to let these alternative stories breathe and observe them transform through psychotherapy, to help individuals become authors of their own lives, rather than characters constrained by scripts written by others. These alternative stories matter. They expand what is possible. They challenge norms and power. And they create hope, often gradually but meaningfully. The Norwegian psychologist and author Arnhild Lauving offers a powerful example. Diagnosed with a severe mental illness and hospitalized for a decade, her life story was largely defined by others. Yet, she held on to a different narrative, a vision of recovery and of becoming a psychologist. Against the odds, she realized that vision. Today, her story inspires many who seek alternative paths forward. My own story, like many others, is shaped by both joy and hardship. It is the story of a curious young female protagonist who has traveled across countries for work, for love, and for adventure. Along the way, I've been fortunate to meet inspiring and generous people. I have also faced loss, at times intertwined with mental illness. These experiences and the meaning I have made of them have shaped the researcher I am today. I would like to express my deep gratitude to the narrative research community for being such a generous, intellectually vibrant, and supportive space. To my in-depth research group, and to my close collaborator and dear friend, Leonard Kiel, who has traveled here with me. To my soon-to-be husband, Christian, and to my children, Felix and Alice, thank you for the love, for the patience, and for the joy. And to my parents, thank you for always supporting me and the faith and the path I have chosen. I would also like to thank my former head of department, Mikael Wettner, for his trust in me, as well as the current head of department at Holberg University for their continued support. And finally, and most importantly, I would like to thank the participants, the individuals, who over the years have shared their stories with me. This recognition belongs in many ways to them. Thank you.
The Holberg Prize is awarded annually to scholars who have made outstanding contributions to research in the humanities, social sciences, law, or theology, whether within one single discipline or through interdisciplinary work. The value of the prize is 6 million Norwegian kroner. On behalf of the University of Bergen, and based on the recommendation of the Holberg Committee, the board of the Holberg Prize has awarded this year's Holberg Prize to Professor Lyndal Roper. Born in Australia, 1956, Professor Roper is a historian of early modern Europe. She graduated from the University of Melbourne in 1977, then went to Germany, studied at the University of Tübingen, and completed her doctorate at King's College London in 1985 with the thesis Work, Marriage and Sexuality, Women in Reformation Augsburg. Roper has worked at King's College London and at Royal Holloway, University of London, where she became professor in 1999 and set up the Bedford Centre for Women's History with Amanda Vickery. In 2002, Roper took up a lectureship and fellowship at Balliol College, Oxford. In 2011, she became Regius Professor of History at Oxford. Professor Roper has received multiple international awards and honors for her work, and she is an elected fellow of several national academies, including the Berlin-Brandenburg Academy of Sciences and Humanities. The Holberg Committee maintains that Lyndal Roper is one of the pioneers of cultural and social history research in 3 areas: the witch hunts of the Reformation era, the Peasants' War, and previously unexplored aspects of Martin Luther's biography. From among Roper's numerous publications, the committee mentions Holy Household from 1989, examining the effects of the Reformation on gender relations, and 2 major studies demonstrating how witches were central to the ways in which early modern society imagined itself, Witch Craze, Terror and Fantasy in Baroque Germany from 2004, and The Witch in Western Imagination from 2012. From Roper's biographical work, the committee mentions Der feiste Doktor from 2012 and Martin Luther, Renegade and Prophet 2016, which the committee finds to be a transformative examination of Luther's use of vulgar language, as well as his verbal pugilism, rampant anti-Semitism, physicality, and self-presentation. Finally, the committee is impressed by Roper's most recent book, the award-winning study Summer of Fire and Blood, The German Peasants' War from 2025. The Holberg Committee finds that Roper's psychohistorical approach challenges previously established assumptions about early modernity, and that her analysis of both the body and the psyche of historical actors has influenced the broad discipline of history and historical mythology. The committee states that Roper's work is path-breaking in its combining of gender, embodiment, and psycho-social history, and that her witty, vibrant, and evocative writing style is both empirically rigorous and theoretically sophisticated, speaking to a broad international interdisciplinary readership and resonating with the contemporary context. The Holberg Committee also notes Roper's inspiring dynamic teaching and her generous support of graduate students and early career researchers, and her ability to communicate historical findings to both expert and broader audiences. The Holberg Board has approved the recommendation of the Holberg Committee and finds Professor Lyndal Roper to be a most worthy recipient of the 2026 Holberg Prize. I now, again, invite Minister of Research and Higher Education, Sigrun Aasland, and Lyndal Roper to the stage, where Minister Aasland will confer this year's Holberg Prize on Professor Lyndal Roper.
Minister of Research and Higher Education, Sigrun Aasland, Mayor Marit Warnke, Madam Rector, Nils Klim Prize laureate Majse Lind, distinguished members of the Holberg Committee and the Holberg Board, dear winners of the Holberg Students and Teacher Prizes, family, friends, and colleagues. The Holberg Prize means so much to me because, as it happens, I've read the work of nearly all the previous winners, and they've been amongst the people whose work has inspired me the most. As a postgraduate in London, I heard Marina Warner give a fabulous, open-ended paper on Joan of Arc, honest about all Joan's contradictions. It showed me how a historian could set out their perplexity and how sources can point in different directions. Paul Gilroy spoke inspiringly at my college in Oxford to move things on from the legacy of Cecil Rhodes and imperialism. I miss Natalie Davis more than I can say. She showed what women's and gender history could be, and throughout her life she was always moving ahead with her wide sympathy for people of all cultures and all religions and none. And I wish that Rebecca Habermas, Jürgen Habermas's daughter, could be here, because she welcomed me, gave me her friendship, and did so much to change what history could be in Germany and who could write it. She died far too soon. The Holberg Board has chosen the people who've been original, path-breaking, who've changed how we think, and they've also chosen people whose work was based on values and commitment, whom I've always admired personally. That's why I'm overwhelmed by this award, which I think recognizes the work of an entire generation of historians, philosophers, and thinkers of many disciplines who have rewritten the history of women, sex, and gender, and taken it in so many different directions. And you've seen this week in both those fabulous symposia, in the masterclass, and in the schools event, where they will take it and how they're responding to the challenges that we face today. The second reason that the award means so much to me is Holberg himself. One of its great pleasures has been reading Ludvig Holberg, whom I confess that to my shame I hadn't known before. A wonderful Enlightenment Danish-Norwegian figure. And he's also a historian and one of the first to write about women. He does not exactly pick up where Christine de Pizan left off in the 15th century, because he isn't providing a list of exemplars of good women. Instead, like Plutarch, he provides a serious examination of pairs of female rulers to point up their strengths. Never reducing female governors to characters, he discusses Elizabeth I. He explains the international situation she faced and the reasons why she executed Mary Stuart without ever stooping to misogynist cliché. He takes women seriously as political actors, and with it, stakes a claim to female equality simply by assuming that women can rule. But even more, he is a fantastic playwright. He has the anthropologist's eye. He notes the ubiquitous tobacco and tobacco pipes. He mocks the poor noblewoman who cannot stand the bourgeois smell of her hostess's house and suggests she fumigate it. He relentlessly pokes fun at the pettiness of class and the pretensions of the cultured, Who can forget the printer's wife who congratulates the new mother on her first edition? Always the worst. And condescendingly explains the difference between folio and quarto. But he's never nasty. As he says, he never aims at anyone, and his jokes are good-humoured, while his plays nearly always aim to restore concord and amity above all. He's a man of the Enlightenment, a townie who has left the world of the 16th and 17th centuries behind, with its cruelties and its belief in witchcraft, who stands on the threshold of a new one. He is, in a sense, a dramatist of kindness, a value that seems ever more important now. So in tribute to Holberg, I wanted to imagine 3 characters who stand in the shadows of his play, The Lying-in Room, Bergelstuen, from 1724. Holberg's subject is the first 6 weeks after birth, before churching, when the new mother is visited by everyone and there is feasting and dancing. First, let me imagine the woman who doesn't appear, but who is implied when Holberg's characters joke about the babies who arrive, though everyone knows their fathers were in the East Indies 40 weeks ago. But what if we turned this around and thought about the women in the East Indies pregnant by these same men, for which this is surely a cover? What happened to them? What were their lyings-in like? And how did they raise their children with or without help from these children's fathers? What about the children who were mixtures, both Danish, Norwegian, and Indian or even African? The hero of the play is a 70-year-old new father who worries that his wife's music master, the cantor, has cuckolded him. But what if the cantor were a castrato, as he probably was? And what kind of deeper level of joke is implied here? How was he played, and with what register of voice? Within the orderly Lutheran household, a wonderful world of sexual ambiguity opens up. The husband is no patriarch, but a figure of fun, grumbling as he grinds 6 pounds of coffee for the new mother's 93 female visitors, fuming about this Turkish luxury, a classic example, of course, of the international trade that was changing that 18th century world. Comfortably off, socially secure, and a new father, his opposite is a minor figure in the cast, the old woman who speaks blessings and who is twitted as an old witch. What does the lying-in room look like from her point of view? Just 100 years before, the lying-in maid, usually an older woman, might be the target of witchcraft accusations that would end in her death. The only sane character in the play is the healthy new mother, immune to any fears of witchcraft, whose palpitations are caused by the doctor's medicine and not by any weakness after giving birth. All these characters are there in Holberg, and we need all their voices in the history we write. And what Holberg chronicles is a massive change in social history, as international trade meant that Norway was much part of a much wider world, and where too the witch gradually ceased to be a figure of fear and was banished to the nursery and to fairy tale, and as the lying-in period gradually withered away as women were thought not to need it. But like much historical change, the end of childbed had its downsides too. Bad luck if you were not as strong of body and mind as Holberg's rosy-cheeked heroine. We live with the legacies of Holberg's blithe assumptions that new mothers have no need of cosseting, or even, one might now say, of maternity leave. The third reason why the Holberg Prize means so much is that it is a loud, international, affirmation of the value of humanities. And this is especially important now, at a time when students are told to choose other subjects, when in my country, humanities departments face closure, and where there seems no future for those who finish doctorates in the arts, when the advance of AI leads people to say that we no longer need history because ChatGPT can provide a synthesis of anything, or that good writing doesn't matter because DeepL can improve your style or even write passably in any language you choose, or that international law is outdated, or historical thinking about difficult issues just an irrelevance when everyone's attention span these days is so much shorter. And this is where the Holberg Prize is so important, because it insists on the value of humanities and of the human. After all, even if robots can outrun humans, that is when they don't fall over, AI doesn't have a body, not one of flesh and blood physiology. AI can summarize articles or produce syntheses, but it cannot give us critical thought or originality or tell us more about being human. One reason why this is so is because human beings are embodied. They move in space. They have what I'd call a psyche, or perhaps we might say an unconscious, what Sigmund Freud called a Seele, a soul. They think, feel, speak, and they move, and their actions are not the result of rationalizations, but of a whole mixture of emotions, or what David Hume would have called the passions. People relate to one another emotionally and in space and time, as we saw from your work, Majse. Different cultures and religions, of course, would conceptualize this differently, and one of the historian's tasks is to elucidate this as richly as possible. But for my part, it has been important to write history that reflects three things about human beings. First, that people are embodied. Second, that they have subjectivities, by which I mean their conscious and unconscious perceptions of the world around them. And third, that they move in a landscape. And I've been able to do that because since the Second World War, women have entered the humanities in great numbers, and they have changed what questions it's possible to ask. We need the humanities because we need to be able to assess the answers that AI seems to offer. We need to be able to interrogate the relationship between evidence and argument, and that's not only what history does, but what all humanities do. And we need ideas that do not already exist in the vast soup of pre-existing knowledge. We need creativity and originality, or wisdom, as you put it. Indeed, I'm hopeful that AI will mean we learn to value neurodivergence more, to see its potential for non-conformist thinking. The humanities challenge us to think about societies as a whole and the structures of power in which we live. And to think in the long term with a sense of context and of the past, not just about what grabs sound bites today. Humanities explore what tools we use to analyze societies and how to change those structures. How, that is, to imagine a different future. Holberg himself brought all this together. He was a dramatist, as well as a historian, an anthropologist, as well as a novelist, a creator even of his own kind of science fiction. As a historian, I've tried to create as full a picture as possible, to include as many voices as I can, and to write about all dimensions of human experience. One reason why I was drawn to Martin Luther was because he does not make the radical distinction between flesh and spirit that most Christian thinkers do. That's why it was so important to him to insist that Christ really was present in the bread of wine and wine of communion. And it's also one of the reasons why he remains a theologian worth engaging with. And despite the famously dreadful things he said about women, who can be useful to women, who usually do badly whenever the flesh is denigrated. Over my career, I guess I've been part of a movement that's sometimes called history from below. I've wanted a history that isn't just that of great men, kings, and battles, and that doesn't use abstractions like the Reformation, imperialism, the household, without taking them to bits. I started history reading my granddad's dreadful British imperial history books that glorified the conquest of India. I still have an old photo of me sitting with him and my brother and sister outside his sleep out where they were on the shelves. And yet I knew that as a cantankerous Aussie First World War soldier, he had a visceral hatred of the British ruling class. Thank goodness those are no longer the books that are on the shelves today, and certainly not in Australia. Above all, I have wanted the experience of women to be part of the humanities. And here I owe so much to others, to the London Feminist History Group, to History Workshop. And here I'd like to make a shout out to my family and friends, so many of whom have come here today, all of whom have supported me, and you've all helped me in different ways. I couldn't have done anything without your help. And that's also meant that my friends have read an awful lot of drafts of the books that I write. Here I want especially to mention Ruth Harris, historian of France and India, who can't be here today, and to my husband, Martin Donnelly. Thank you for your support and generosity. When I got my first job, I was the only woman in an Oxford senior common room alongside 60 men. When I first went to Germany, there were only 3 women professors of history. That world has gone, I hope for good. But we still have a long way to go to make our humanities departments more diverse and to make intellectual conversations truly global. At the end of Et Dukkeheim, A Doll's House, that gripping Norwegian drama that I remember reading as an adolescent in the Australian summer, Henrik Ibsen's Nora says, she must try and educate myself, and that this is something she must do without her father or her husband for herself. She refuses to be a doll any longer, and says to her husband, I believe that before all else, I am a reasonable human being, just as you are, or at all events, that I must try and become one. Nora has to choose between becoming herself and her children and husband. She cannot be a mother and be free. We still don't have a world where women can easily have both fulfillment and motherhood. But there is so much more we could do to make that happen for men and for women, for trans people, for straight people, for gay people, for those with and those without children, because we all have a stake in the future, and even in these challenging times, there is so much to hope for and so much to do. Thank you.